Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning back in. I am continuing this fuse board here. I'm just moving the meter tails which were going across the top of this board here. I'm actually just moving them down through here. So let me just put this back in quickly because I want to get the power back on relatively sharpish. And let me just do this and I'll be back in a sec. Right, okay, power's back on. As you know, last week I put, there was these holes here in the bottom of the fuse board, right? And I just fitted a load of grommets, a grommet on that side and a grommet on this side, and just butted them up. So I dropped this all out, I took these wires out this morning, dropped this out and put those in, and that's now the result that you've got there. I've got to tighten that one up, but that's them back in now. And it's great actually, because then you put a lock ring, I don't know how well the camera can see that, but you put a lock ring in the middle and that gives you the space. That was why I put the two grommets in, because it gives you the space to put the cover back on, because it has to overlap a few mil. In the end, I didn't have to do that. You just put a lock ring on, tighten it all the way up, and then, so the lock ring just sits in the middle. That was the way, I'll dig the comment out of somebody who left that in the comments, thank you, because that was what I ended up doing. I put this one in, the base covers, the end caps went on, I put those on, I did that this morning actually, so those are on now, so that's a nice flush finish. And I rerouted. I've got to take these out and neaten it up because I've been in and out of there so many times, I've lost track. So I've got to take these out and just re-terminate them neatly. But the tails were coming in over the top, if you remember. So what I've done now is just rerouted them around the side here and gone in that way. I just think it's a neater finish. This hole here, you'll see, you noticed it in the last video that I put I cut a 50mm hole in this truck just for cables to pass through, and I just put a bit of this edging strip. I've got stuff. You just buy it in like, 10-meter packs or whatever, and you just put it around after you've cut a hole, you just put that around it. And the amount of people who are like, oh, that's appalling, you shouldn't do it that way, you should use bush and lock ring. I understand to use a bush and lock ring if you're joining two pieces together, but if it's just a piece on its own like that, I don't see what purpose it has. So I've got to cut this piece of lid in, which I'm going to do now, and then I can tighten up those under there, and that's it. That's pretty much as far as I'm going to go for this for the second, and then all these trays, finally all these trays can start going back in. Before I forget actually, I understand that there is a thing about cutting your own joints and stuff and not using manufactured bends. I do understand that there is a thing that they recommend you should use boxes like this, corner joints like this, which I've got here, which is what I was going to use on day one. But I ended up deciding not to do that for two reasons. The first reason is because that incomer there. Now, I cannot move this across. The customer doesn't want it out from the wall, because I was thinking to put a uni strut to bring it off the wall a bit, but the customer doesn't want that. He wants this as tight and as up out of the way as possible. So that was a no-go. And also, people were then saying, oh, but you haven't planned it properly because that's in the way, you've got to move it across. I can't move it across because this cover for the electric motor for the garage door has to be able to come off for servicing. Now, if I move this across, you're never going to get that off. Some planning has gone into this. It's not immediately obvious, but I cannot move that across, which is why I didn't want to cut this out, because otherwise you're going to end up hacking the inside of this out. It's going to be neater to do it this way than it is to put that in and just fucking maul out the back of this, and it's just going to look like dog shit. So that was why I didn't use those. And also, I actually quite like measuring it, cutting it, and taking your time, And if you just fit these for the rest of your life, you sort of forget that bit, But what do I know? Actually, I spent half my time saying that reminds me, but it's true, it does remind me. This workbench, you saw me in the last video, I was using it out there outside the garage. Of course, I didn't think about this when I was using the bench. You just use it and you don't think anything of it. But these clamps, right? I had a piece of trunking. I was cutting it with the grinder. I was just sort of holding it like that on the bench. And somebody said, why are you doing it? Somebody in the comments, I'll try and dig it, I'll leave it out. Somebody said, why are you doing it that way? You've got the slots on the bench to do it. And I read it that night, I was like, there are slots on the bench? And there fucking are. It sounds silly, but until someone else tells you how something's done, you don't fucking know. And that's the beauty of YouTube. It's so simple. I saw them and I just thought it was like for a router or something, for like carpenter's tools and stuff. It's not, it's for these fucking clamps. Clamp goes in like that. You then depress the trigger. It then drops into there, and you've then got you can then clamp your trunking or whatever. But until you had somebody tells you, you don't fucking know. So yeah, you learn all the time in this trade. I learn every day. I find when you're When you're doing like steel trunking or anything, if you're filing a metal edge, you see people, they file both ways. I personally think you shouldn't do it that way. Take your file and just file away once and then turn around to the other side and then do exactly the same thing, and you get a nice smooth finish then. When people go back and forth, I find you just don't get a smooth finish. Just file away from you once and then turn around. Or you can do it on the back, do it on the pull side if you want, but just do it one way. And that way you get a nice smooth finish, how I find anyway. Right, our KFC's here, I think. Work stops for food, back in 5.
A few inches later.
Right, that's the lid back on. So I've cut out the holes which didn't have the indents. I've cut those out. Those are now back on. Some people were talking about mitering these corners, which is, I suppose you could miter them, but if I had a mitering machine, you could just put a pair of 45s on there, and yeah, I get you could make it look really, really neat, but you'll never get a nice accurate cut, a beautifully straight cut off like a hacksaw or a grinder. If you've got a chop saw and a 45 with a metal blade in it, you get a beautiful cut every time, but this will be fine. So I've just put a little bit of edging strip on there just so it's smooth. But that's it, she's on. So next thing, this tray can go back in now. Finally, after weeks of having it, all these cables draping down here like mother's washing line, these can go back now. So give me 5 minutes, let me get the tray up in the air and I'll report back in a sec. Now this box can now go, finally. All these zip ties, they can all come off now. So this temporary box, that can now disappear. Right, yeah, that one's still alive. I'm pretty sure that one goes upstairs to the kitchen. There's a socket above the ceiling. In fact, let me go and check. That's the problem with this customer. It's like a fucking sweet shop. I will literally, by the time this job's finished, they'll have to take this window out with a crane to get me in every day. I actually think it's that socket there. Awesome wiring, I've got to be honest, you know? It's fab. But that can actually go. I'll find what breaker that is and switch it off, because then we can remove that completely and that can go. I'm not going to cut that tight to the ceiling because there may be a time having a 2.5 there going up into the kitchen ceiling and coming out down here. We don't need it now, but there might be a point where that could be bloody handy. So I'm just going to leave that there. I haven't been able to do much this afternoon actually behind the camera because I've just been trying to get a move on, but you can see the gist of what. So I've just sort of loosely bolted that tray back in, just very loosely. I've got to butt those 3 pieces there together properly, but this one's gone in and then it's quite a tight fit, but you get the idea. Those were to go. That's why on the top of this piece of trunking I left it open, if you remember, because that was the plan. The tray finishes just there and the cables can just disappear into the trunking. But I've run out of these nuts and bolts. I think the owner's got some here, but I don't know where, and it's 5:30, so it's time to pack up. Top tip, I found this out earlier. If you've cut a 25mm hole instead of a 20 into something, and we all do it, and if you've got to put a bush and a nut through or something or whatever, if you get a 20mm bush and then put a 20mm lock ring on it, you can then put that in the 25mm hole, and it just sort of gets you, basically it solves your fuck up, if that makes any sense. I did that earlier actually on that one in there. For some reason I cut a 25mm hole. I was just not thinking. You can do that, that's a quick fix if needed. So this video is going to pick up tomorrow morning because I've run out of puff now. It's 5:30, I want to go home. So the next thing you see now will be tomorrow morning.
Day 2.
Okay, we're back. Day 2. Actually it's about day 10, but I mean, I'm just connecting these. These are the last cables now to go into the board. This one's actually a spare for some kitchen lights, which we probably won't need. But these ones here were the aircon ones which will run in. And you saw me replacing them the other day. The guy was, he mentioned it the other day, he said, oh, you didn't fit high tough. And I just use this, it's like a really heavy flex, if that makes any sense. It's not as heavy as high tough, it's like this TRS cable. It's just like a really thick 2.5 flex, but it's heavier than a 2.5 flex. It's like somewhere between high tough and flex. And I just fitted this. And he was like, oh, it's all right, I can use it. It's just, I thought it was going to be high tough. And I said, oh, I picked this up from the wholesaler. But why do aircon fitters have such a thing about fitting high tough? I don't understand, because you can clip this on the outside of it. I mean, I guess high tough is more impact resistant and stuff. But once it's clipped in place, there's no reason why you couldn't even just use a 2.5 flex. I don't see why high tough. I mean, I guess maybe in heavier areas where there's more risk of damage, but that's the only thing I can see. The actual cable has the same it's the same properties. But leave it below. I'd just be interested to know why aircon fitters love high tough so much. Okay, now I'm just putting these last few, this is the last aircon cable to go in. I'm just dressing the board because it was an absolute shit show in here, because you've taken everything in and out half a dozen times. It just starts to look a bit messy. So this is the last cable to go in, and I've taken the others out and I'm just sort of dressing them neatly from left to right. I've literally just got off the phone to this argument of these, you know, the fully encapsulated LED lights, and I was just saying how much I really don't like them. I've just got off the phone to a customer of mine that I fitted a load of those for about 18 months ago. Fitted it was 9 in his bathroom, and he just rung me, literally just got off the phone to him now. 6 of them out of the 9 have failed, and that was 18 months ago. And he said, oh, but I can't change the bulb on them. I was like, no, they're a fully, you know, it's an enclosed LED. Oh. So basically, I now have to go back, and you just look like a fucking dick. I don't understand. And they were good. They were N lights. I can't remember N lights. They were good fittings. They were really good. But they were a waste of time fitting them, because you end up looking like a complete tosser, because you've got to go back in 18 months because 3/4 of them have failed. And you fit V-Pro dimmers and stuff to try to give them as much lifespan as possible. It's a waste of time. It's much easier. Just get a fire-rated can and just put a GU10 lamp in it, and you've got the entire pick of, you know, whatever lamp you want, you know? Sorry, went off on a little rant there. I'm sorry about that.
12 seconds later.
And this is, I'm continuing now. This is the thing. It was like 18 months ago, but the manufacturer's warranty is only 12 months. Now you feel like a total spaz when you turn up and you're like, sorry, I've changed them all. I've put, you know, different ones in now, and I put can fittings in. And that's it. I can't put encapsulated fittings back in the ceiling now, because you're going to be back there in 18 months' time. So you've got to take all 9 out to then put 9 fire-rated cans in, and then, but who stumps the cost of those 9 cans? I was 18 months ago, so morally, should I pay for that out of my own pocket? But actually, no, the manufacturer's warranty is 12 months on pretty much just about every light fitting in the world. So did you say, well, sorry, look, that's the manufacturer's warranty? Because then he'll turn around with the argument, I thought it was supposed to last for years. And what do you say back to that? I'd love to hear, do you fit these fully enclosed lights? Please put it below, because I'm like in a moral dilemma now. When I go back there next week, whatever day it's going to be, you know, I've got to buy 9 cans, 9 sets of LED lights and stuff. And it's like, you know, get this back. It'll be half, by the time you finish fucking around though, it's goodbye, unpack, pack up, it's half a day gone. Who do you bill for that? Or do you now do this out of a moral thing that, just leave it below. I'd love to know how you guys deal with this sort of stuff, because this is a classic example of just manufacturer bollocks. They claim like 50,000 hours. It bloody isn't. It's like 5,000 hours. Anyway, yes, leave it below. All right, I'm trying to make some sort of sense of this tray. I'm just trying to zip tie down as many of these cables as I can. Which does remind me, a couple of people, more than one, who were saying, are you planning on earthing the tray? No, is the answer. I haven't planned on it. My understanding with tray is that if it's carrying double insulated cables, which it is, it's just twin, there's no requirement to. If it's carrying things like singles or something, or if it's passing through, say, from outside to inside, where there's a different equipotential zone, or there's a potential for an imbalance, then you earth it. But my understanding is that if it's inside and it's just carrying twin and earth, it's carrying double insulated cables, it doesn't require it. So I am bothered. I wasn't planning on doing it, but... Right, in a previous video, this window here, you'll notice that up here there's a steel tray. And you'll notice that I clipped, it was in my last video, I actually put a link, I'll replay the little moment I'm talking about now. I'm not using steel ties here, fuck that. I don't think it's really going to have any effect. It's not going to hurt anyone, no one's going to die. I don't think it's going to inhibit a fireman's access, because he sure as hell ain't going to go through that window. But obviously the YouTube community are all experts, and apparently this is the fire escape. So that should have been done in steel zip ties. So we're going to test that theory. Apparently this is the fire escape, which means that a man of my sort of size and stature could fit through here. Right, let's give it a go. Obviously we're in a burning building right now, so time is of the essence and I need to get out quickly. Right. Yeah, all right. This is the fire escape. The fucking Irish pixie couldn't fit through here. Obviously there's a conveniently placed ladder which just happens to be here during the fire, I'd like to point out. Clearly can't fit. It is not possible. Just try a different approach, a different angle of attack. Right, obviously my lower half of my body has now sort of been cremated alive. No, I need a different plan of attack. Maybe feet first? No. What if I go, yeah, hang on. If I go this way. Okay, right. Okay, I'm half out. I'll just spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. Yes. Right, this is not a fire escape, okay? Right, I now seem to have got myself into a sort of awkward position. I now can't get back because I don't know where the ladder is. Right, I think I've made my point reasonably clear that this is not a fire escape, okay? You cannot use this window in a fire situation. Where's the ladder? That's not a fire escape, okay? There are numerous people all saying some bollocks about another electrician not following regs and rules. No, I don't live out of the regs, okay? I'm not sad enough. If there was a reg that told you to go and jump off a cliff, would you do that? You wouldn't, because your logic just tells you you don't have to follow every single reg blindly like sheep, you know? Just because there's a tray there hanging upside down, you don't have to put metal zip ties on it. You know, you are allowed to use your gut feeling, your intuition, your common sense. You can use all of these things. You don't just have to blindly follow what some fucking bullshit regulation says. It's not a bullshit reg, actually, it is a good reg, but I'm just making the point, you don't have to follow them everywhere. You are allowed to use, you know, a bit of common sense. And common sense tells you ain't gonna fit through that window. Oh, that's my new caterpillar stuff. Dirty now, but in the name of science, I thought that was necessary. Anyway, moving on. I can all piss and moan about that later. Next thing I've got to do, so that's more or less done of a fashion for the second. Basically what we've got to do now is I've got to run, that light switch there is currently over there. I've got to remove that light switch, put it here, and then there's going to be two switches. One's going to be for the light in here, and another one's going to be for that sort of backroom gym bit back there. So that's what I shall now do. Okay. Right, so that can go back up to the ceiling temporarily in a minute. Once I've run the new cabling in, that can come out. And those two brackets there have got to come off. So give me 2 seconds and I'll do that now. So this, on the other hand, this is the classic example, in my opinion, of where you would use steel ties. So you've got a tray which is hanging upside down, and it would make perfect sense to put steel ties. I say that, I'm putting plastic ones in for a minute because I just want to get these in for a second and then I'll put the steel ones in afterwards. You haven't got to put them in on like every single tie. You can put plastic ones in and just put the metal ones in sort of every half a metre if you want. It doesn't have to be every single one. So like I'll go behind, for instance, and I'll just put a metal one there, just so it don't hang down. Because like I would consider that a fire escape, you know, like a normal person would. This one is now the new feed in, which is going to go, it's gone from the fuse board across this tray and it will go down to that switch. And then from there I'll just run a pair of switch wires. One will do the lights in this room and then one will do the lights in the sort of little gym room. Okay, these proved to be very popular, so we'll do another one. I think we're on episode 4 of Doing It with Tom.
With Tom.
Right, connecting a light switch, very simple. I shall show you how I do it. So we take our feed in. If you might have a feed in and a feed out. I've just got a feed in here, so we've just got the one cable. So you strip it back, the way they say that you shouldn't do it, but we know that everybody does. Pop that in the box. I tend to find that it's best to mark up the cables as you strip. So this is just the way that I do it. I mark up the cables like that with your feed in, switch wire 2. You mark them all up. And I strip up to that, and you just leave that in the back of the box, because then when the next person comes along, it just makes life a little bit easier for them. And it also, if you come along later on, it's just quicker for you to identify what's what. So I leave the markings on the cables. I think it's good practice. Then what I tend to do is take your lives and neutrals and just tuck them all up out the way and get your earths and then just cut them to the right length to go to the lug on the inside of the back box. So for the next step, we take our neutrals, cut them off, and we'll put all the neutrals into a Wago. You can use a normal connector block like the old school connector blocks if you want with the screw terminals. Most people use Wagos. They're just quicker and faster. Okay, so once your neutrals are in a Wago connector, then you want to take your feed in and we'll start connecting up the switch. Now I'm using grid switches here because it's just the way the customer wants it. Grid switching it's a really good way of switching if you've got things like, here we've actually just got a pair of switches, but you could if you wanted to have a switch and then a key switch next to it, or a few spur. That's where grid switches come into their own. But for here, I'm just using a pair of just normal light switches. Now you have to make up a little link wire like that one there to bridge between the switches if you want to bridge the common over. And your feed in goes straight into the common, terminal mark common, put your little bridging wire in. If you so choose, now would be the time to fold the NC cables over. I personally don't, because I don't see, if you've got two cables in a terminal, I don't see the need to do it because two cables actually fits quite snug in the back of the box. So that's your feed in, going in, and then your switch wire, which is what will do this light up here. So we're going to strip that, and that will then go into L1. You could put it in L2, it just means that the light switch will work upside down, or you turn the light switch upside down if you want, but generally it would go in L1. So your second switch, you've got the other wire, that will go into the common terminal as the last one, same thing again. And if you had a feed out, this would be the time you would you'd have the feed in, you bridge across, feed out would then go to the next light switch. We haven't got that here. And you take your other switch wire, which will do, in our case, the gym next door, strip it, same thing again, that'll go into terminal L1. And those are your switches, that's basically it. So you've got your neutrals in the Wago, switches are done. I've put a fly lead, all the earths have gone into the back box, and I've then taken a fly lead off to go onto the front of the grid. I said in the previous one, I don't always do fly leads. So for things like sockets and stuff, I personally don't see the need because the screws earth to the back box. The only time I make an exception is on grid switches, because when you fitted them, there is still an element of movement on this grid. And I just like the idea to know that it is earthed fully through the use of a fly lead, but you don't have to, it's of your choice. But at this point you'd earth your grid. So you pop it in, that tightens up like that. Once you've done that, take your switches and click them into your grid, or your yoke as it's known, and then screw the yoke onto the back box. You'll notice that I'm actually just using the end of the Weir screwdriver because actually for small stuff I find it easier to use this without the big the screwdriver head. And I've got a blank here, so I'm going to put that one in as well. Right, and once your yoke is tightened up and it's looking reasonably level, you then take your front plate and that should just screw on like so. Done. Simple as that. I haven't shown you this kitchen yet. He's got a Miele hood going in. It's a surface mounted one up here, but there's a fault on it, so they've had Miele have got to put a new control board in it, I think. But this is, I'll remove it just so you can see. Yeah, check this hob out. I haven't even properly looked at it because when I got here, this cardboard was all over this. I've just taken it off just to have a quick look. What a fucking Miele induction hob. What a beautiful, isn't that stunning? Look at the finish, how they cut. Have a look, get in this corner. How they cut this. They've set it in. What a just most beautiful. I keep banging on about this whole thing of when a job gets done nicely. What a beautiful finish. You just, like in most tenanted properties, you have a cutout, you just drop the hob in and that's it. You connect it up and hop in your van and go. But how nicely it's done, You think this is all one piece of worktop. It isn't. These are two pieces, and the joint is actually here where my finger is, right? So this was one piece they carted upstairs, and this one was another one, and you can't even see the joint. It's such. I don't know how. I was asking Matey Boy here, the owner, how can you do it that you can't even? I can't even see it. They put wax. They get hot wax, there's a joint here as well apparently. And they put hot blobs of wax, they stick pieces of wood on it. When it dries, they then use clamps to clamp it together. And I am guessing they did the same here. They clamp it together, and they've got some resin, which is like the same color as this worktop. And basically they just pour the resin on the joint, and I think they let it dry or something, and they just polish, and they use like a really like, I don't know, 2000 grit paper or so. It's like a really, really super fine paper, and they just keep on polishing, and you get that and you can't even see the joint. I think it's just, I do admire that. I know I sound a bit sad, but I find it so admirable when you can do a job like that and you can't even see, you can't even see the joint. But unfortunately, I can't fit the sockets. They did such a beautiful job here with this, but I can't fit the sockets in. I got one at the end in, which I fitted, but these boxes are, this lip's too high. These sockets won't fit in. This bottom piece needs to come down maybe 3 mil, somewhere around there. But I'm a bit worried because if I get you, I'll get a socket and I'll show you. There's not a lot of, there's a bit of give on those sockets there, but not a lot. But by the time they cut the bottom out a bit further, you're really pushing whether that socket's going to actually cover the face. I'm not sure if the socket's actually going to cover the hole in the end when they cut that out a little bit further, because that won't, at the moment that's too high. It's got to come down a few mil, because when you put the socket on, the screws just don't, they physically just don't reach the back plate, the back box. So I'm not sure how they're going to get around that. We shall see. But all of them are the same, unfortunately. The back one was all right. So I think his wish of having this done by Christmas, I think, is scuppered. That was the other thing. This hob, right? It's an 11 kilowatt induction hob, right? And I've run a 10 mil, or it's a 10 or 11 kilowatts. It's a big hob. And I've run a 10 mil T&E to the contactor downstairs, right? But this cable arrived with it, and this is the cable which you would connect into the hob, and this would traditionally go into the wall outlet, which I connected. I mean, they've done the calcs, and it must work, but on the wiring diagram, you've basically got brown and black, they go into your live, and the grey and the blue go to neutral. But this is only a 1.5 flex, so you've got a 3 mil flex. If you double those up, that's basically 3 mil each. You can see where I'm going with this. I've just fitted a 10 mil T&E. I mean, I understand that Flex has a higher current carrying capacity than Twin, but that's just a 3 mil, that's 3 mil. And that's supposed to carry 10, 11 kilowatts. They must have done the maths and somehow it works, but that just to me, that seems really thin. But just put your opinion below. Why do we go through such an effort? Oh, it's got to be 10 mil, you've got to fit 10 mil as standard nowadays. And then you get the hob and they've just provided that. How does that work, Leave your thoughts below. I'd be interested to know. They actually give this, it's like a chopping board, which they just put these little sort of glue blobs on the bottom, but it's basically what was the cutout for the sink. Yeah, it is. It's a cutout for the sink. It's the same size. But it's neat, isn't it? And they just give you that, and that's then a chopping board. Very neat. That wasn't actually one I wanted to talk about. Somebody mentioned in the last video, where's the sink going? Well, this is it. As far as I'm aware, because people were asking about what the reg was for sockets near sinks, my understanding was there isn't actually a reg as a distance. There is a recommendation somewhere, but it's not in BS 7671, and they recommend the socket should be, it's recommended it's 300 mil away from the edge of the tap or the edge of the sink. I can't remember which. It's building regs, going to the building regs, I think it is. So that's how I've done it, just 300 from edge to edge. This place looks like a fucking bomb's hit it. It's just crap everywhere from 2 days of work. But you get the idea of what's happened in here now. So that's basically the finished result. I'm sure there'll be some anally retentive, probably industrial electrician that says that's a pile of shit, which you're completely welcome to. I don't really care what you think. I happen to think that looks like a very neat job. But you see the idea of the tray now, that was sort of the long-term plan. So the tray goes in, this one then comes out, and yeah, that's sort of the end result now, which is what I was aiming for. I've got to label it all up yet, but yeah, I'm going to spend the next 3 hours packing up. Thank you very much for watching. Patreon, watch another video, all of that's coming up on the screen now. I will see you in a week's time. Might see you on a Friday if I get time to squeeze a Friday video in, but if not, it'll be next Monday. Thank you for watching.